GingerGM.
Well, hi, and welcome to another long play game. And I'm facing a 2192, so a very high rated player. And someone was asking me to play more Black Line openings. Black Line is a DVD which, of course, I did for ChessBase, not for GingerGM, so I don't get as much money when you buy it, but I still get a little fraction of a sale. And that's what I'm maybe going to try out here. I don't know why my rating has suddenly gone up. My opponent's saying hi, so I'll say hi back. But look, I've suddenly gone up to 2457, so so I am on the way to 2500. Yes. So okay, so what the Black Line, is with E5 here. So we'll play that in a second. Let's play Knight F6 first, just to attack this pawn here. Makes a bit of sense, and I'll stick with some setup here. I mean, I could also now go into Sicilian with C5 as well. So I'm just telling my opponent when we're recording. So it depends what we want. But I did say I did a Black Line, so we'll stick with that. Okay, so the Black Line is when you go E5. And the main line is when he plays D4 and I go Knight BD7. So that's the Black Line proper as such. So my opponent's chatting to me, and hello to XTrillBeats. So hi XTrillBeats, and I've just and I'm sure XTrillBeats is not a cheat. I get so paranoid after the amount of people I've faced, but I'm sure this guy's not. So I'm not even going to think that anymore. Unless he starts playing boom, 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 boom. Okay, of course he's not. So Bishop G5 is a move that I know Obion spoke to me about, that it's very popular at club level. Now, in this position, this is, I would say, stage one. Now, I've done a free video on my YouTube channel on the Black Line if you want to learn about this, and I break it down into stages. Stage two is normally Bishop E7, C6, Queen C7. And of course, I want to break this pin now. So Bishop E7, I'm not going to think about too much. It should be played. Just breaking the bishop's pin towards my queen. And my next two moves will probably be C6. C6 controls some central squares, prepares B5. It also allows my queen to come to C7. The queen on C7 in some lines is good, because it gives extra protection to my center. That's why I say this is stage two. But this is slightly different now because my opponent has played Bishop G5, which is not one of the main moves. And when your opponent plays something which maybe takes you out of your known theory, it's very important to think afresh. So what I mean by that is Bishop G5 is not a main move. It's a bit of a sideline. I don't even know, I didn't cover it probably in a video earlier on. So this move, I've got to think a little bit differently. Now, this is quite a strange move, bishop to B5, because this helps me do what I want to do. I want to play C6 anyway, so this move kind of makes no sense. But again, like I say, even if my opponent is a bit low rated, 2192 is very good at this. Maybe they've changed the ELO system here. And I mean, the moves that my opponent's playing will probably be the kind of stuff you might face yourself. So I'm just going to face this like a GM. Now, I want to play C6 anyway, so of course I'll play. My opponent's asked a question. I have a question. How do you sign up for your first chess tournaments when you got into chess? Okay, that's an interesting question. So he's asking me, how do you sign up for chess tournaments when you get into chess? Good question. Maybe just Google your local area now. So I bet he's been nice, so I better chat back to him. Local area, or I used to search via my chess federation, the English chess. God, that's a long email. Federation email. It feels like an email. There we go. Okay, so he's gone bishop to d3, and I don't think he's putting his pieces on the best square, because when you develop your knights and bishops, you want to try to put them on squares where they have some influence on the position and not just merely passive. Now the bishop on d3, it's very inactive because it's just staring at, it's blocked in by its own pawns. A much better diagonal is this diagonal on c4, but let's now try to take advantage of the fact that my opponent is playing some maybe slightly slow moves here. Now one thing I could do is obviously castle. I don't know if I'm going to go queen c7 now, because like I say, bishop g5 has changed the position somewhat. Another thing I'd like to do is to go knight h5, and then after the bishops get exchanged, try to get my knight to this square f4. This would be a great square for my knight. But if I go there and he takes, I might have to watch out for knight takes e5, which will release a queen threat there. So let me just analyze that position. So knight h5, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, knight takes here. Now I could go pawn takes, queen takes here, pawn takes e5, knight e2. And I don't know, I don't think I want to do that quite yet. So I think I'm just going to castle now. The idea with g5, which is the black line proper, is also tempting. So, okay, well, let's play h6 first, keeping things flexible. Because if he takes off on f6, I'll probably take with a bishop, and my bishop will have very good pressure on the center. Okay, so he has, and I'm going to take with a bishop now. So again, I'm changing plans to the normal black line, because now, as he's given up his bishop, I want to try and get this pressure in the center of the board on the dark squares. And when you have a bishop, you want to open up the position. So I'm going to try to do that by using this pawn to open up the position. So I'm just he's asking more questions. So my opponent's gone d5 to try to keep the position closed down, and this makes sense when you have the two knights. He wants to try to keep the center locked. So keeping my bishop therefore trapped in. Now I don't really want to take there straight away because it allows his knight in, so I think I'm just going to play a normal move such as castling kingside, and we're going to see where he commits his king, and later on what kind of plans would I'd like to take here. If we could take with a pawn, if I could ever force that situation, that'd be great. Why would that be great? Because I get rid of this pawn here, and then later on I might better play f5, and I have these two pawns, a bit like a Dutch defense, which is very strong pawns. But at the moment f5 is a plan I could go for, but maybe it's not as strong when there's a pawn on e4 that can take it. So I am going to maybe consider playing knight c5 as well to get the two bishops. That'd be quite an interesting option. This bishop of his is not very good because, as I mentioned, it's trapped behind these pawns. So I'm not in a particular rush to take that bishop off the board. But one thing that I do like is that this square is very good for my knight. But if I do move the knight there, he might play b4, attacking my knight. And then, okay, I can take on d3. He will take with his queen, though. And his two knights are not so bad then because it's all locked in the center. So what I think I will play, because this is a very good square for my knight, and I want to get my knight and bishop, these two highlighted pieces, to the best squares. So what I want to do is secure the c5 square for my knight. So by playing the move a5, which is a very common idea in a number of positions, I'm going to stop him ever playing b4, securing the c5 square for my knight. So that'll be my my next move. Put my knight on c5, get my knight to a good square. Oh dear. So knight on c5, and excuse me, I've still got this bloody cough. Especially when I'm talking, when I rest my voice it's okay, but obviously this, I talk quite a lot, hence why the throat's still a bit sensitive at this moment in time. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to get the knight here, and then I need to start thinking of a middle game plan. And now in this pawn structure, the main break is this f5 move. So I've got to move the bishop. Now I could move the bishop to e7. Okay, my opponent maybe not playing the best game here because he is moving Harry. but I'm probably just going to whip that one off now. And okay, we'll have a look at this game afterwards, and I'll tell you a bit of theory. If if my opponent hasn't played the best game, we can look at the theory of this game, and I can tell you a bit about the more theory, the latest theory. So I'll try to give you a bit of a lesson anyway. But I think here I'm certainly not concerned about that move, because that is one case when Harry is not maybe the best pawn move to make. I should really get some water, shouldn't I? But I'm not going to do that now. So I'm just going to whip that pawn off on h4. But other plans I would have done there, had my opponent not played that, would have been to move the bishop either to e7 or even g6 and put it on g7, and then go for f5 and try to get my knight to c5, because my knight on c5 would increase pressure against these two guys, and maybe even get my bishop pinning the knight there, and try to get this would have been my middle game general plan. But the way this is working now, it seems like I've picked up a fairly simple pawn there. My dark square bishop, by the way, is not a particularly great piece in the opening, but it can be great when f5 is played, because if you imagine this pawn on e4 and the dark square bishop still being on the board, if you can imagine the pawn on e4 ever moving, so capturing f5, capturing here, as soon as I play the move e5, e4, that would be a lovely diagonal for the bishop. And this is well worth remembering if you play the dragon opening, not so common there, but mainly in the King's Indian defense. The King's Indian defense shares this kind of pawn structure and shares the dark square bishop, and that bishop can be bad, but if it releases itself later on, it has a lot of dormant potential, and that is something that you've got to notice in some pieces. Some pieces are bad, can be bad, but they have a lot of dormant potential later on. I wouldn't say this bishop has dormant potential, because I can't see any diagonal where it will really open up. So that just is dormant. That's a dormant. That's a dormant piece. Rather than having dormant potential, we're just going to call that a doormat piece. But anyway, okay. So I've won a pawn, and winning, I would say, one positions. This should be a one position. It is one of the most questions I get asked the most. What should you do? Well, the first thing is don't relax. The second thing is don't be afraid to enter tactics just because you're, don't play super safe just because you're material up. Have faith in your own ability. And if you need to go into tactics, then go into tactics. Try to make exchanges is generally a good rule. Try to keep it simple if you have the choice. So, do try to keep it simple, because you are a pawn up. You don't need to risk it. Simple chess is okay. But you just gotta really and try to swap off is good. Try to still work out how you can use the extra pawn. Maybe later on I can get a past h pawn in the ending, but obviously I'm a long way from there. Okay, so where to put my queen now? Queen e7 is a very super safe way to play, but then maybe my opponent will play f4. I think I prefer a more active square. Why not? I mean, I think you should always keep your pieces on the most active squares possible. Queen e7 is okay, but I want to put it on g5 because it's more active. For example, it's a prophylactic move, meaning I'm stopping my opponent's ideas. So I'm stopping f4 because I have the pressure against g3. So it's more active here, and I'm also putting a bit of pressure on my opponent's king side. So it does a couple of roles here. Now, again, these two pieces are my main concern. So I can try to play this knight c5 idea, as I've discussed, with the idea of just putting a bit of pressure on e4 so I can play f5. This kind of combination, knight c5 and f5, can be very good, because then if the bishop gets here, you have all this pressure on the central squares, and my knight increases pressure here. So this is very logical, keeping the idea of f5 available. And also, when I move the knight, my bishop now has h3 or g4 to come into. Well worth considering. Knight f6 is an interesting possibility, because then I can aim to take the pawn on d5, and if he takes with a knight, I take with a knight, and I force his pawn eventually to take on d5. And when you're making pawn exchanges, you've always got to think structurally, does that help me or does that help my opponent? If it helps you then you should aim to do that. And I think it definitely helps me to swap here and force him to take with that pawn, because then my idea of f5 becomes very strong, because he can't swap it, and these two pawns are beautiful. So it's really deciding for me where my knight should go. Should it f6 it, or should it c5 it? Now, f4 I'm not worried about, because takes, rook takes, and then I have a very nice square there. Maybe he should play f5 anyway. And if I put the knight on f6, I probably stop f4 I meant, because I go pawn takes, rook takes, pawn takes here, and then I might have knight takes d5 if you're following this. But I have to watch out for a bishop check, but I'm taking there with check as well. So that's a possibility. I think I prefer the f6 square for some reason. Just trying to, because on f6 I'm putting pressure on two central squares. On c5 I'm only putting pressure on one central square. It does mean f5 is not going to be as, you know, coming as quickly, but I have other ideas of maybe moving the knight over to h4 and trying to come into f4. So this is an interesting option. I'm going to go for it. So if you see the idea, knight h5, knight f4 is also an attractive idea to start an attack with 3 pieces. Generally, when you start an attack, you need to have three pieces in order to be a success. So that's another thing I'm thinking of. Oh no! Oh god, darn it! I've done it again. That is ridiculous. I've got to stop doing that. Oh dear. So I think I'm just going to have to do. I mean, I don't really know how that occurred. I've got, you know, really unfortunate mouse slip. Well, oh dear is is what I can say. So okay, well now we're going to have to go into challenge mode. So I've given him a queen. I'm still going to try to win this one, even though I've given up the queen. Let's just see if I can fight. Okay, he's gone back. Oh, that's so kind of him. That's so kind of him. So kind of you. Oh, that's so kind of you. That's a real gentleman. That's so kind. So I mean, how many people would do that on online chess? XTrillBeats, you're a legend. You deserve a free DVD for that. I mean, you don't meet nice people generally. Yeah. DVD for that. VD for that. You deserve a free DVD for that. Email me up and I will digital download you one. Digital download you one. So Simon at GingerGM.com. That's really nice. I like that, because otherwise I kind of ruined the video, and you know, I'm sure you guys would be like, oh god, he's done it again, what's this moron up to? Okay, anyway, so let's not move the queen back to e3. Now I have a couple of plans here. My opponent is not really, I mean, when your opponent makes a move, you should always look what's his idea, and I don't see how that rook is ever going to come in or you know, into the position at the moment. So I'm not worried about that rook. Oh god, stop clicking squares, Simon. Stop bloody clicking squares that pieces can move to. So instead I can either continue my plan of taking here. Another idea, I don't really see the point of developing this bishop, because, well, I mean, it's not doing anything on d7. I might just want to keep it, and moving it to g4 allows f3, just loses tempo. The other idea I can, of course, play is knight here. Now, ideally, I would like to do this after pawn takes, knight here, but then, with the idea of f5, but then he can play knight to e4, because he has that tempo, and my queen has to move. Maybe I can play queen here, but I don't like it. Actually, what am I talking about? I can't go knight here at all, because his rook is now guarding that square. Completely, you know, completely stupid idea. So maybe actually this bishop g4 idea is not bad, because after f3, then my bishop comes back to d7, and I can claim that the move f3 has weakened his position for 2 reasons. Number 1, he's not threatening this square with his pieces because there's a pawn on f3, and number 2, when I go knight h5, g3 will be under threat because f2 is not defending it. So in actual fact, this move to me makes quite a lot of sense here. Try to force him to play f3, And then my bishop does come back, and it's more not about developing my bishop, which is kind of useful to connect my rooks. Of course, you want to connect your rooks, this is important, but it's more important to gain control of h5 and also to weaken the g3 square. So when I play knight to h5, I have a direct threat of taking on g3. Okay, so he's going for a queen exchange. Now, as I mentioned before, generally this is a good thing. And I can now go into a positional mode. Exchanging queens when you're a pawn up is not a bad thing to do. So I'm going to do this. And now, rather than thinking about these tactical ideas, I will swap plans. And I'm now going to go for the f5 plan. I'm going to try to use these two pawns. So I'm going to take on d5. I wouldn't have done this if my knight wasn't on f6, because I don't want him to take control of this, what's called an outpost. It's an outpost because I can't attack that square of a pawn anymore. But as I've mentioned before, when you're making changes in the pawn structure, you've got to try to make sure they work in your favor, otherwise don't go for them. And you know, pawn structure is very important, but this change in the pawn structure, the way I see it, is certainly beneficial to me, because when I go f5, I have these two very important pawns. I don't want to play f5 now because f3 traps my bishop, so I'm just going to simply move my bishop back. Next move, I'm going to go f5, and I get the pawn structure that I mentioned before. And you can see it's very important in chess. You need to know what pawn structures to aim for and what pawn structures to avoid. And you should know this really. Okay, let's just think. He wants to maybe play this move, so I'm just going to stop. Again, I don't want him playing any activity moves, so I'm going to stop him playing c5 by taking control of that square. Very important to know what pawn structures you're aiming for. When you play an opening, what do you want to get in the middle game? What is good for you? What's bad for your opponent? Very important. Okay, so here, I know that this is good for me because I can use these pawns. Maybe I can play this move. Endings are quite good for me. All his pawns are on light squares, so his bishop is quite bad. My bishop's not great, I have to admit. I mean, it's going to be very hard to use my bishop, so I don't mind exchanging bishops later on, because you know that will simplify the position. Okay, so now again we have another pawn structure discussion here. Do I make a connected, a protected pass pawn, or do I leave the pawn? Now, if I make a protected pass pawn, which a lot of people would say, yeah, that's a great idea because protected pass pawn is fantastic. Well, the issue with that is the position becomes incredibly blocked. He moves his bishop and he maybe puts his king on e3 and he has a potential blockade, and my winning chances go down. So I don't think I actually want to go e4, even though in this particular case, pawn structure-wise, that helps me. Pieces are the other thing you need to take into account when you're looking at pawn structure. That way it becomes too blocked. I'm a pawn up, so I think the best thing to do in this situation, well, I could take here straight away, or I could go rook e8 first. It doesn't, I don't think, make too much difference. I think rook e8 is a slightly more flexible move, because let's say he goes king f3, I can then play e4. I don't necessarily have to take on f4, even though I probably will. Maybe I have e4 e3 to break any blockade, but my main idea in this position is to take on f4 and then use my pieces. So I want to go rook e3, rook e8. So I don't want to block it up. I want to try to use the open file. So I'm moving my rook to the open file in anticipation for it opening up. And I am a pawn up here. The only plan my opponent has, you should be constantly thinking about pawn breaks, stuff like this, is a3, b4, c5. But that takes 3 moves, with the idea that he uses his pawn majority. He has 4 pawns versus my 3 pawns on the queen side. So when you have a pawn majority, you should be looking at that area of the board, especially in the ending, to try and make a pass pawn. Okay, so my opponent, you see the benefit of me moving the rook here. The benefit is I've given him an extra possibility to go wrong, and he has gone wrong. And now, of course, I can play this move, and this move is basically a bit of a killer. So, okay, so my opponent didn't have one of the best games there, but I still think that was quite an instructive game. Okay, my opponent is going for mouse slip. Hard. Okay, hard for me to move the pawn back. I mean, should I... So I mean, should I offer him a draw out of respect? Probably, but I'm not going to. Is that cruel? I don't know. I mean, I mouse slipped. He's blundered, so it is a bit of a difference there. I think that wasn't a mouse slip. I think that was more of a blunder in the position, you know, to be honest. And here, well, okay, the rest of the game is going to be fairly straightforward, I feel, but we'll have to play it out as we go along, which, okay, could go on a while, but I won't be rude towards my opponent, because he could have won the game from that mouse slip situation. And again, you know, you can still mess up. I'm sure the lower rated players out there who are watching this, you still want to know how to win these positions. You can still blunder. I mean, it's quite a simple position, so it's very hard, I think, for me to make a blunder here. And I'm still sticking to principles. I had the pawn majority on the king side, 3 versus 2. So my principle is I'm going to get an extra pawn. Eventually I'm going to get a pass pawn on the king side, and eventually I will probably queen that pawn. The other thing I want to do is activate my 2 pieces that are not working. So I'm going to bring my king maybe towards the center, and my bishop. How can I activate my bishop? Well, I might activate my bishop like this, bring it around so it can get into the game as well. And this combination of ideas, I think, well, I mean, of course it's game over now. So, I mean, the black line, like I say, the one thing I would recommend you guys have a look at if you haven't seen it. I have done a video. I hope the sound is alright for this video, by the way. I know the last couple of videos I've done, the sound has not been good quality. I haven't had a chance to test this. And I'm hoping, by the way, that just stops his rook coming in. I'm hoping the sound is going to be good here. If not, I'll definitely have a good look at sorting it out. It looks like the sound levels are better. I want to make my videos as high quality as I possibly can, of course. Yeah. Now, what I might actually do, guys, because I don't think there's any educational value in you really watching the end of this game. So I'm just thinking now, I might actually... oh, that was a bit silly. Oh, I say that, and I've just blundered a pawn. See, this is what happens when you are a bit... And I've blundered a very important pawn. Oh, God. I mean, that's just me. I mean, why did I not see that? I was talking too much. I mean, of course, it's still winning, but I blundered an important pawn. That was silly of me. Silly. But anyway, I mean, I will go on to win this one. I think that's going to be pretty clear. And so what I might do, I suggest you fast forward now to the end of the video. I might even clip it, I'm thinking. And I will... yeah, I think I'm just going to queen this pawn, aren't I, here? So, yeah, so I'm going to actually stop recording this now, I think. Unless he resigns very shortly. It's only 6 minutes to go. And then I'll have a quick look at the opening stage of the game, and I'll edit that back onto this video, just to save you watching this last part. I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not, but I think that's good, because I think the interesting part of this game has now gone, and I don't think there's really much my opponent can hope for here with this g-pawn just coming down the board, and it could go on for another 10 minutes, and I don't want to waste your time. So okay, for this game over, but I will start recording again when the game is over, and I'll have a look at the opening moves, so we can have a look potentially where improvements could have been made for both of us, and hopefully I can teach you a little bit more about the black line. Do watch my free video in the YouTube. It's a couple of videos on how to play this opening as black. That should help you as well. My opponent is really going to lose this game very quickly now. So cheers. I'll edit the next bit on, and one of my more easier games. Thank you for watching. So the game ended eventually, and let's have a look at the opening, where it was maybe the most interesting part of the game. And the black line, I'm not going to go repeat what I repeated in previous YouTube videos, but some sort of interesting moments. I mean, bishop b5 is just a bad move. It helps me do what I want to do. And you should always be careful when you move your pieces into your opponent's half of the board, because they are likely to get kicked away, and you're likely to give your opponent quite useful tempo. Now the only thing I did want to mention is maybe something more sensible like bishop c4, how we could continue here. Well, I think h6 would be a good way to play, and again I think the exchange on f6 probably always helps black, because another thing is I'm slightly more cramped than white. White has 2 pawns in the center. I have this slightly more cramped position, so making exchanges in cramped positions is a good thing to do, and my bishop also has influence on the center. So probably after h6, bishop h4, I must decide what kind of setup to do now. And there's 2 kind of things I can go for. I can go for this knight to f4 idea. So let's have a look. This is what I'd like to play, because my knight is very good on f4. But the only tactic I'm slightly concerned about is knight takes e5, with the point that the queen is taking here. This is what you need to watch out for. I have 2 ideas, and probably I'm okay by going something pawn takes. Another thing I have to watch out for is the knight coming to d5. So actually, I don't like this. I forgot about this knight d5. So probably I should just go c6. This shows another important reason why c6 is handy. It controls this square. And if my opponent castles now, well, knight h5 becomes stronger again. And I certainly would consider it here. But also another move worth playing in these positions is b5, given a chance. If you get a chance to play b5, you should often just take it to kick that bishop away. But I think this position, there's a lot of interesting plans here. I think generally, even in this position, even if I don't want to put my knight on this square, another maneuver that's played a lot of grandmaster level is this weird move, knight h7. Now, why such a weird move? Well, I think the exchange of bishops, who does it help? Whenever you've got an opportunity to exchange pieces, ask yourself, does it help yourself or does it help them? I think it helps black, because the bishop on e7, again, was not a very good piece. It's trapped behind these 2 guys. And again, you're more cramped. And the queen takes a much better role here, guarding the center. So I think even this move has a lot of sense. Why the knight on h7? You might be thinking, well, I avoid tactics with knight e5 and queen h5. But most importantly, let's say a4 to stop b5. This knight has great potential jumping out to g5. And that might be a maneuver you guys want to remember. If there's ever a capture on g5, you have the h file to start an attack along. Maybe queen f6, queen h6, go for the attack on the h file. So just some little ideas there. Okay, my opponent was a gentleman, so thank you to XTrillBeats for giving me the move back there. Maybe not one of the stronger opponents that I've played, but okay, that's fine. I mean, it might be more your level. This is a range of different players, and it doesn't matter, because what I'm doing throughout is just explaining the ideas. So it's my ideas. It doesn't matter who the opponent is, and hopefully you guys can learn something from the ideas that I'm trying to demonstrate. So thank you very much for watching. Please do like the video. Please do subscribe to my channel. It does help me, and I want to grow the channel if I can. You know, if I can't keep growing it, what's the point as such? I like doing it, of course. It does give me a lot of enjoyment, and I hope some of you guys learn something and enjoy yourselves as well. That's the other thing. I want to spread the love, the chess love. Spread the love. So thank you very much. I'll see you again soon for some other video. I'm not sure what yet. Maybe I need to change. Maybe I'll do something a bit more spicy. Something a bit weird. I'll have a think about it. Goodbye for now. Cheers.